Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined today by my good friend Mark Ostrander. Grant Turner is in the air. Spoke to him this morning, so we're going to try to struggle on without him. Mark, how are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm a little stressed. Border Brawl's in a couple days. I guess maybe we'll talk about that at the end, but lots of loose ends, kids jumping in, kids dropping out, people wanting more VIP seats, people not reading the emails about where the hotel is, like all kinds of fun things like that. Like it's fun imagining how, I don't know, there's that whole book that says you learned everything you needed to learn in kindergarten, and some people are still not learning those lessons, but the event's going to be very successful. We've been doing it a long time, and
where's it at, David?
It's in St. Charles here in Missouri,
Okay.
like half an hour, like right by Lindenwood University.
All right.
We're doing them twice a year now. So the one in St. Charles, St. Louis is in the fall. The traveling one is in the spring. The next one will be in Philadelphia, and we'll announce that, but we're going to do something different. It's going to be really cool.
Good.
So new partners on that one, and excited about it. So let's get into World Team Trials, man. Just overall, before we get into weights, what were your thoughts on it? To me, it seemed like it felt bigger than what it was. I mean, and what I mean by that is it's the non-Olympic weights. It's only 4 weights times 3 styles, not 6 times 3 at the Olympics or 10.
Sure.
And one of my good friends came over earlier this week, and he's very supportive of our event, and he donated some items, and we were talking, and I realized we are in this, like you and me and Grant are in this, like we understand this. So I guess I was explaining it to him. He's a very smart guy, very successful guy, but he just didn't understand everything. So this is maybe the best way to explain this for people. If you're a college person, okay, and you just follow international wrestling, like you root for America,
Sure.
like that kind of thing. So there are 10 weight classes in the non-Olympic years, okay? And we'll take COVID out of it because that screws everything up. So on the 3 non-Olympic years, they wrestled 10 weight classes all at the same time at a venue. Okay, Final X is what leads into that. U.S. Open, what leads into Final X. If you qualify, if you medaled at the year before, you sit in Final X. If you were in the World Championships the year before, you're the number 1 seed in the bracket if you didn't medal. In the Olympic years, it condenses and then expands. So in the Olympic years, people are moving up and down. We've talked about the James Greens of the world and people like that. And there's 6 weight classes. If you wrestled in the Olympic trials in your country at an Olympic weight, now let me rephrase that. If you wrestled in the Olympics, not the trials, in the Olympics, so take Kamal Bey, okay, because he went 0-1.
Yep.
He is now not allowed to go up or down and wrestle at a non-Olympic, try to make the team at the non-Olympic weight.
Correct. Just this year.
Well,
that's what you're saying.
In the Olympic year,
Yep.
Olympic year, you're not allowed to do that. Okay. But I corrected myself because Chance Marsteller wrestled at 86 kilos at the Olympic trials, didn't make the team. So since he didn't make the team, he can do that. Dayton Fix didn't make the team at 57, so he could try to make it at 61. Okay. These non-Olympic weights are going to wrestle their world championships in Albania next month, October. Okay. Those athletes, if they medal in the United States, will now sit in Final X at the non-Olympic weight. If they want to go up or down to the Olympic weight, they will sit to the semis. So let's talk about that in one scenario, and then we'll get back to the wrestling. David Taylor won the trials at 92 kilograms, which is a non-Olympic weight. We'll talk about whether he's going to wrestle at these Worlds or not. But let's say he wrestles at the Worlds, and let's say he medals. He now sits in Final X at 92. The rumor is, and I believe it's true, that Brooks is not going to make 86 kilos for a while, if ever again. So he would go up. Now, he medaled at the Olympics, but since it's at a different weight, he goes to the semis, even though he beat Taylor in the Olympic trials.
Yep.
Okay. I laugh because it's just the same. Brooks keeps getting on the wrong side of this because, like, the same thing happened with him and Zahid. So it's just funny. And it's a good system. There are just quirks to the system. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Let's talk about 61 kgs. We'll just alternate on who goes first here. Your thoughts on 61?
Blaze was so impressive. We've talked so much in the past about these young kids coming up and being able to compete with, college national champions. He beat the 125 returning national second place finisher early in the year in a tournament last year from Illinois.
From
Purdue, I'm sorry. So, and we talked about it then, how these young kids are getting into college tournaments and placing and how impressive it is. This is different. You're talking senior level, beating people that have placed at the senior level Worlds. Dayton Fix was silver at the Worlds a few years ago.
He beat Gross, Garrett, Fix in order. Gross has made a world team and beat Fix to do it. Garrett was a world medalist and an NCAA champ. Seth Gross was an NCAA champ. Fix was a world runner-up and multiple 5-time All-American, 4-time finalist, I believe.
Yeah. It's nuts. And it's just so impressive that our young kids, and I still have to think it's the clubs that they have, the coaching that they have now, that in the past, they probably wasn't out there for the kids. I know we didn't have NCAA champions running clubs when I was young, and I'm sure they didn't have them when you were young, David. It's probably hard to find a club that had that quality of coaching that could work with these kids day in and day out.
The number one change on why youth wrestling is better and why our youth teams, our age group teams for USA Wrestling, and when I say our, I'm not trying to say have anything to do with it, but our country's teams, are the development of RTCs or creation of RTCs and the ability for high-level coaches to make money, make a living coaching youth. It used to be the only way you could make money was coaching college. You're older than me, and I don't mean that sarcastically, but it used to be like if you're trying to make an Olympic team. I remember this. I was telling a friend of mine this story. Like, I was pretty good in Greco when I graduated college. I was like top 5 on the ladder. I was going to have to go work at Home Depot, move to Colorado Springs, be broke. And I was a really good student that graduated from a really good school, and I had a really good job offer. And I just took the job offer. And when people say they have no regrets in life, that's a real thing that I think about. But we weren't good at Greco then. The long story, but the point is now kids are making all kinds of money wrestling in college. You bring up Blaze, and the running joke on Flow was, why is nobody recruiting this kid? And clearly it's the opposite. It's funny. It's sarcastic, but funny. It's a harmless joke. But most of these kids are committing as juniors, the end of their sophomore year. He's in his senior year in high school. He will sign his national letter of intent, his NLI, in the next 60 days. And he will get a lot of NIL money when he signs that.
Yeah.
But he's a super interesting kid. So I think I don't know if I made the comparison on the podcast, but there's this, like, Luke Lillidow, Jax Forrest remind me a little bit of like Dake and Taylor. Like, Taylor's really spectacular. scores a lot of points. Jax scores a ton of points. And Jax and Luke have gone back and forth. But Luke will have these close matches, but he'll just win them. And Jax wins a ton too. So, but Dake and Taylor both won a ton too, you know? But one of them, when you watch them, you're like, man, this guy's going to kill everybody. I watched Matt Lopes wrestle Luke to overtime in a high school dual meet. I mean, I was Matt's side. I was on the play-by-play. If you watch that one match, there's no way you go, this guy's going to be a freshman and could win the NCAAs, right? Like you know, 4-time age group finalist, 2-time runner-up, 2-time champ. And again, everybody has a window of greatness and a window of mediocrity. Okay. It's funny because by the way, one of the great joys of my life, my dad came over last Sunday and watched the finals with me.
Cool.
Was awesome. Like we try to be collectively pretty smart on this podcast. Let's hope that guy never decides to start a podcast. Okay. Just genius. Okay. But like I talked to him on the phone before the Fix match. And he goes, does this Blaze kid have a chance against Fix? I go, if it's a shot clock match, he's probably going to win it. And he goes, really? I'm like, he's so good on the edge. He's so good at like floating, getting you to think you can shoot him off, redirects, go behinds. I mean, all the buzzwords, but he is so savvy. He is so composed. And it reminds you of how good the kid was that beat him at the freaking Worlds, like 7-0 or whatever it was, because nobody beat him 7-0 in our tournament.
Nope. And we had last year's world champ at 61, beat him by 1, and then beat him by 2 in the final match. So I mean,
2 out of 3, yeah.
So I mean, it's unbelievable.
If you want to make a criticism of Blaze, it's that he doesn't score a ton of points, but he scores a ton of points against guys that he knows he's better than. Like I was telling my dad, I go, I commentated this dude's junior duels final in June. He was like on a high school all-star team. The levels are crazy. And you know, and his coach wrestled for you.
Scotty Burnett.
Shout out to Scotty Burnett, Eric Burnett, Perrysburg. Blaze is special. Like he's just special, man. Like some kids have it. You know, like his brothers at Purdue. It's all the usual suspects on his recruiting list. You know, there's conversations, well, you know, he's an hour from this place and 2 hours from that place, and he trains at this RTC, and once he commits, you know, no other RTCs are going to have him, and that's fair. You know, like, and it's interesting because like somebody was talking to me about Ladarian or D Lockett, and I'm like, the situation matters on how these kids wrestle, how open they wrestle. Like when Ladarian was at the Olympic trials, he just let it rip against like Meyer Shapiro because he's not supposed to win. At the Ironman, he had a ton of close matches because there's more pressure. Like I used to I'd watch kids that couldn't win state and they'd place at Fargo. It's like nobody knows. Your girlfriend doesn't know what Fargo is. Nobody in your school knows what Fargo is. They know what state is. But this kid is winning at every level, right? Like he's medaling at world teams, age group teams. He's our alternate. He also took 3rd at the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and this weight, like that weight, had a ton of backside forfeits or defaults or whatever you want to call them. And that's one thing about being young. You're like, I'm going to wrestle. I don't care. You know, like, but like him and Jax, Bassett, I think they're all going to end up at 65 kilos in 28. I mean, and I think if one of them didn't, I think it's Jax because Jax's dad is like 6'3". Like he could go all the way up to 74 kilos by then. You lock him in a weight room at a good college, you're making a face like you have a question or.
Well, I think Blaze I mean, he's a good sized kid, and I think his brother wrestles for Purdue at 157, David, if I'm not mistaken, and he's a good sized kid too.
Yeah,
I think he probably could be up at that weight. I think in college he's anywhere from 141 to 157. By the time he gets into college and a year, start lifting more, because it doesn't look like he spent a ton of time in the weight room. But his wrestling skills are phenomenal.
You know this, right? Like you lift and sometimes it doesn't stick, and then you lift and it sticks. Yep. I mean, he could be 33 as a freshman. I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, he could also be red shirt and jump to 49. Like,
yep,
you could totally see it.
So,
right?
Yeah. But Jax, I think, is still growing. I mean, he just keeps getting taller, and he's going to be really good.
Oh, he could not grow and be a 49 pounder, you know? Yeah. So, like, I mean, he's got the frame already, you know?
Agreed.
All right. So Blaze, probably story of the tournament. Vito wins the tournament. Vito sat out last year. He won 2 shot clock matches, basically, against Blaze. Got the 1 push out, which changed things. Let's talk big picture. There's a lot of commentary about this grounding rule. Okay. Now, I know, and I say this sincerely, I know you have worked in the last several years to become way more fluent in international style wrestling. But you're a folk style guy at heart. I think that's a fair sentence.
Yep.
So what do you think of the grounding rule? Because the grounding rule is a function of the step out or push out rule.
I don't like it. I think kids are they're automatically going down to their knees once they get to that line, that threshold. And they're just working the rules just like any other sport, just like we do in college, obviously, for folk style. Whatever rule you put out there will be worked. You could hold a leg for 5 seconds, and then it was a stalling call. They'd hold it for 4 seconds and then let go of it, and then go back and do it again and get the 4 count and go back on.
Still do that now.
Yeah. So, I mean,
neutral danger, there's a million rules. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you go out of bounds, David, and he forces you out of bounds, it should be a point.
Okay. So what's interesting is this, like you and me have this saying, let's not complain about the problem unless we have a suggested solution. Right. So I think any person that watches wrestling at any sort of intellectual level would go, they're gaming the system, right? And let's say you're bigger, stronger, better shape, you're bullying me around, you get me to the edge, and I can drop to my knees and slide off. And these guys are really good at sliding off now and not planting their feet and getting driven back up.
Correct.
Okay, and so then that's the cheat code to stay in the match with you, right? But then the other side is like, okay, you get me all the way at the edge and you try to shoot me off, and then I turn, and then you're on a foot, 1 knee down, 1 foot up, and then I get 1. It's the only solution I can think of is like, if they said, okay, like, how there's a verbal warning before we go to shot clocks.
Mm-hmm.
If the first out of bounds is a verbal warning, and then the next one is either a point or a shot clock, I think that would be interesting.
It would be.
Because here's what you'd figure out. Guys would stay in the middle, and women would stay in the middle. The wrestlers would stay in the middle. Like right now, wrestlers are so good at staying in the middle. Like in Greco, they stay in the middle because you can't get grounded. So
yes.
And folk style matches, college matches especially, people have gotten better at staying in the middle, because now there is an option for the referee to say stalling. And in freestyle, there was a big emphasis here for not only for it to be 1 for step out, but 1 caution 1 if it looked like you were fleeing a hold, while stepping out. It's one thing, like if you get a single and you just walk me out of bounds. It's another thing if you get a single and like I'm diving out and you're chasing me out. Okay. It'll be interesting to see if UWW looks at this. The rumor is after the Worlds, they're going to look at some of these rules. And I got to say this, the product for wrestling is really good. You know, like we're no longer in wrestling like sets in tennis where you can beat me 6-0 and then I can beat you 1-0 and 1-0 and win the match. And too many breaks and cardio doesn't matter. And then they're deciding ties based on pulling a ball out of a bag. You know, like I think one thing that people should keep in mind is, could you explain this to somebody who is really smart but is ignorant about your sport? So like saying, yeah, if we don't call stalling, and if nobody scores, we just reach into a bag, and whichever color comes out, that guy wins 90% of the time.
Well, that's because he gets his leg up in the air and you get a certain position.
Don't even get just that guy wins 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that's too complicated for somebody who doesn't understand the sport. I'm saying like you're now adding wrestling knowledge to it. What I'm just saying is, hey, this is how you might as well flip a coin. That's more fair.
Yeah.
So the fact they got rid of that is good. Okay. The fact that there's no overtime is probably good because I'm friends with Dennis Hall and I'm friends with Brandon Paulson, and I watched that match, and that match was amazing, but it also, tournaments could go forever.
Yep.
And if you don't like the no overtime rule, then you're not for the Olympics or anything else ever adding weights, because the whole point of that is they have a schedule. So they got to stay on a schedule. So if you go, well, we don't know how long matches are going to go, that's a problem.
You're right.
So, all right. So back to 61. Sorry. I mean, but it's our podcast. We can tangent what we want to tangent on.
True.
So
David, what did you think? Did you think Vito looked good in the two matches that he wrestled, or did he look like he's still a little bit banged up and he's not back to 100%? Because that's what I felt.
I think it's a combination of he's not 100%, and I also think it's a combination of Blaze doesn't engage, right? Like sometimes you see two people and you're like, man, this is going to be a great match because they scramble so well, and there's all these, and like, well, like what's happened now in wrestling is counter offense, go behinds, down block, go behinds, reattacks, whatever, anything where you do something first and I do something second. When you do any sort of committed attack first, the second attack has gotten so good that people are scared to do the first attack. It is also a way to stay in the match, right? Like, think about this. You just hold position, you hold position. The worst case is you're down 2-0, 2 shot clock points. Okay, like if there's no engagement, no one's going to the edge, there's no big scrambles. So people get exhausted from scrambles, not just hand fighting. I shouldn't say they don't get tired from hand, but exhausted. Like if you get exhausted from hand fighting in America, you're probably not elite. Overseas, you can be elite and just get tired from it. But in America, like that's the least level of cardio you have to have.
Yeah.
So like if you're significantly better than me, that's what I want to do. I always make the analogy, like we talked about golf last week for, a minute. Like you're way better than me in golf, okay? And I know you had your hand surgery, but whatever. When you're healthy and I'm healthy, you would crush me in golf. Okay, we can still go have fun, but you would kill me. But if we just say one hole at my home course, I get to put the pin where I want, I got a chance. It's not 50-50, but my odds of winning are significantly higher than if we play 18 holes anywhere. Like maybe it goes from 1% to 20% or 10%, something, but it goes up dramatically. Sure. So the argument that I would make when I was coaching college was if you're the better guy, getting as many scrambles as possible, because you're going to win them. the flaw in that logic is it's hard to get in 50-50 scrambles when you're the one that's always generating. Because these guys are so good at reattacks now. Yes. And if you're Vito, I think you have to make a decision. How much risk do I take here, right? Because Vito's a guy that can go get it when he needs to, right? And they also have this stupid interpretation of like, and I've talked to high-level refs that are told this is what they're told to do. Like, let's say you're controlling the center. They'll put you on the shot clock first. Because the argument is, well, the next period, we'll put David on the shot clock, then it'll be 1-1, and Mark will be winning on criteria. The flaw in that logic is there's going to be a third shot clock. And the other flaw in the logic is just call it how you see it. This, to me, bothers me as much as grounded, because this feels like an easier fix. Yeah. Okay, if you're pushing me around and I'm like engaging but just enough, right? Put me on the shot clock, and for the second period, do it again. They do it in Greco all the time.
Yep.
You get 2 turns on top if I'm not doing anything. So I think Vito wrestled smart. And the other thing is there's no pictures on the scoreboard, right? On the scorecard, right? Like, just,
it's true.
He was never in danger of losing. His defense is so good. And his defense is really good when he knows you have to come to him. That's the other thing that changes it, right? Like, your brain, if you're winning, you can kind of shut down, look for your best setup, and then attack. Okay? If it's tied, you have to think both ways. And if you're losing, you're like, I just got to go. I mean, I think Vito wrestled the whole match like he was winning, both matches.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what else I got on 61, and we keep it moving anyway. So 70, interesting bracket. James Green pretty much ran through this thing, beat Arrington, beat Pinheiro, beat Jordan Oliver, and then beat Pantaleo 10-0, and then another sort of shot clock match. Pantaleo beat Morton, Yaya, Duke in a real feisty match in the semis. I love Jordan Oliver. Like, he's a friend of our family's. He put this post out that said, I'm not wrestling the second day because I have all these injuries and recovery. You don't need to post that, because if you'd made the finals, you would have wrestled. Because if you weren't going to wrestle, then you shouldn't have wrestled at all. Like, unless you got hurt in that last match.
Sure.
Oliver had a great match with Andonian, like, came up big on the shot clock. The story to me here is James Green looks like he's back. We all know James Green is way different at 70 than 65. So I don't, like, kind of have to live under a rock to just not understand that guy's not a 143-pound human being. But he had that hip replacement surgery, the same one that Askren raves about. He looked good, man. Like, he looked really good. He looked under control. He just looked really strong. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, I thought he was phenomenal. And I was worried, and I talked about this earlier on one of the podcasts, that when these guys are also coaching, that it takes away from their training. But I think a couple of the guys, even I think it was David Taylor, had said, when I got in the room with the guys and started wrestling with them every day, I felt like I was getting better. And so it wasn't just, himself working with Kyle Dake or somebody else, they're training. He was working with all the kids, breaking down the techniques. And I think a lot of times when you actually break down the techniques that you're teaching, that you get better at it because you're going over it in your own head and thinking about the little things that are important, why it works so well. And I think that's a big thing for some of these guys. And obviously James Green did it. David Taylor did it. And they're both coaching. So I thought that was a big benefit for both those guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's also interesting, like, there's this whole argument about you got to work out with people better than you. That's not always the case, right? Like if you're, well, you go back to golf. If I'm playing with you all the time and you're just killing me all the time, it takes a mentally strong person to find a way to improve in that. Like sometimes I just need to go play golf with my dad, who I'm better than, and win. you know, I mean, we're smiling, but it's serious. You got to win sometimes, right? So, I mean, what do you think his Green's chances are? Well, okay, let's go back. Vito and Green, what do you think their chances are at Worlds?
I think I'm hoping Vito's a little more healthy and gets in a little better, maybe his mind, the competition part of it. I think obviously being a world champ last year at 61, there's no reasons to think he can't put that tournament together. We had talked at the Nationals this year. He hadn't wrestled well, lost twice to Lehigh. And he was, I think he was seeded. Was he the 3 seed or the 6 seed? He was 6 seed. So, I mean, and I called him to win it, and I didn't think he was going to have a problems winning it. And actually, he looked really good at Nationals. I think he's a big meat wrestler. I think he's going to get everything.
I also think he was on painkillers. Yeah.
I don't know. It works. So he looked awfully good. He looked fluent. And I hope if he's fluent at the Worlds, I think he's got a really, really good chance of winning it, at least being in the finals.
He's built for freestyle, right? His leg lace is world class. His dad was a high-level international wrestler, Olympic medalist. I mean, he said in press conferences, placing at the world level was more important than winning an NCAA title. I think everybody sort of conceptually understands that, but I think he grew up that way, right?
Yeah.
Like NCAA, just part of process. World Olympics, that's our goal. It's interesting because James Green, super nice guy. Like he was been on the podcast as an athlete and as a USA Wrestling developmental coach. It feels like this story of, if you picked one overarching story, it was redemption this weekend, right? On the men's side, like Green redemption, Burroughs redemption, and Taylor redemption. All in, and that's the thing about these non-Olympic worlds. These dudes all lost.
Yep.
At the Olympic trials. So that's just facts. Like that's just how it is, right? So super happy for James. Pantaleo's knocking on the door. So, I mean, I think we're in good hands there. Okay, 79. 79 was an awesome bracket. Let's talk about some side stories first, and then we'll get to Burroughs. I think the two side stories here, to my opinion, are number one, Alex Dieringer retires. Number two, Carr beats Keegan.
Oh, Keegan beats Carr.
Sorry, Keegan beats Carr. And then Carr beats Haynes, and Haynes beats Keegan. Not in that order, but that's basically A beat B, B beat C, C beat A. And there's two of those results that are really interesting, right? I think I picked David when we made our picks, and part of it was just to be different, right? But part of it is there was a path. The Keegan got that takedown and high leg lace early, was up like 8-0, and then the match was never close. It might have been like 10-2 or 9-2, 8-2, something like that. But David got one leg up in the air and didn't score it, and then but he was never in. Keegan was never in danger. Levi Haynes looks like he's ready to wrestle 174. I think his attitude was definitely different in this meet versus the Olympic trials. You come right off wrestling a full season, just kind of throw your hat in the ring. He lost to Facundo there, but also like he was on his way up weight class wise, right? Like they wrestled that one at 74, which is 163-ish. This is 79, which is 174-ish. And I'll take us down a quick tangent. Penn State is favored to win this thing, but they have a bunch of question marks, right? Like they're going to start a true freshman at 25. They're going to start somebody at 33 that didn't place. They're going to start somebody at 41 that lost to the champ and runner-up whose ceiling might be third, even though he had a match really close in the finals he could have won. They're starting a guy at 49 that's off of injury. They're starting a guy at 57 who's up 2 weight classes. They feel like they have a lock and bonus points at 65. If you started Facundo at 74, he's never been to nationals. Starachi at 84 is up a weight class with Keckheisen there. They don't have a medalist at 97, and Kirkfleet feels like a lock, okay? Now, listen, that's pessimistic viewpoint, okay? I could go through why I think a bunch of those things are going to turn out well.
Sure.
And the number one reason is Penn State does really well at nationals, but I don't think Levi Haynes wants to redshirt. I mean, I remember I saw Tyler Kasich at Power and Light, and he's like, Coach, I don't want a redshirt. And I don't know what that means. I don't know, like, who portals or who stays or who backs up. But, I mean, if I have Levi Haynes, I'm probably wrestling him. Now, again, I'm not in the room. Kale's a better coach than I am. Okay, so, I mean, this is an outsider's view. But let's first talk about Keegan, David, Levi. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I thought it didn't surprise me Keegan beat David in freestyle first time. I think I picked him to beat him. It did surprise me that Haynes beat Keegan, and it wasn't very close.
None of these matches were very close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that shocked me. And then the wrestlebacks I don't really take all that much stock in, but David came through the wrestlebacks and beat Haynes handily for third. I think it was 9-3, 8-3.
Carr beat Kennedy Monday 8-4. Carr won by default over Ringer in the backside semi. Levi beat Keegan 6-0 in the backside semi, and then 8-2.
Yep.
So 9-3, same thing.
Yep. So it wasn't real close. But yeah, I mean, what a nice problem Penn State has they got so many good kids in that room. And we're not even talking the Seeleys and the
well, they're not he's not at that weight. Zach Ryder's at that weight.
Zach Ryder, who's also plays second at the Worlds, U20.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, again,
they're loaded.
NCAA is a different beast, right? Like, I love Luke Lilladell. He's from St. Louis. I know his family, but he is not proven at the NCAA level, right? Like Facundo, superstar recruit. Ryder, superstar recruit. Maybe bigger recruits than Levi, arguably, okay? But Levi's done it.
Yep.
I mean, he was second and first against O'Connor. O'Connor should have been a 3-time NCAA champ. Like, if he had an ACL, he'd have been a 3-time champ.
Yep.
And also as a true freshman and true sophomore, okay? You know, and we see this more and more where these kids, they stay longer and longer, and there's not necessarily positive returns on that 5th, 6th, 7th year.
Correct.
So a lot of times it's just good. If you're good enough to go. So.
But, I mean, we're not even talking about the 2 guys that were in the finals yet. Mark Stuller and JB.
We're going to go there right now. Okay.
I mean, that was just the appetizer. Then you get into the main course, which is
But I think, okay,
unbelievable.
like Keegan in the rankings was above Levi Haynes. Okay, I'll be it. So we did rankings for years. I would change the rankings after this. I would make Haynes 1. Would you, if you were in charge of the rankings, or would you say it's freestyle, it doesn't count? Because it's at exactly the same weight class within a pound.
I would say it's freestyle. It doesn't have the weight the collegiate style does. And Keegan's going up 1 weight. Haynes is going up 2 weights. I probably would put Keegan number 1.
Okay, by the way, 79 kilos is 174.165. Okay. I got a buddy of mine, like when I call it 174, he gets all bent out of shape. Okay, so, dude, you're 0.1. They're the same weight. Okay?
Yep.
I would say they wrestled at the weight class Okay. 174, 174.2. I don't care if it was front side, backside, whatever else. Levi won nationals last year. Keegan didn't. Okay. And they just wrestled. And again, rankings don't matter, like, but it matters in the team points, right? Like Mizzou would get 4 less team points.
Sure.
Okay. Penn State, like they need it, would get 4 more. Okay, let's go to the finals. So my dad was over, and he said this. He goes, "You can tell Burroughs made a conscious adjustment to circle in a certain direction and to make sure that Marsteller didn't get to his legs." Marsteller seemed to get to his legs very easily in the series last year. And Burroughs is one of these guys. There's certain guys that have been absolutely great at wrestling, but their defense isn't awesome. Like he's got really good splits defense, okay? But he's not his defense, he's good at everything.
Yeah.
But his defense isn't world class like his offense, in that like David Taylor, you shoot on him, he's going to cradle you and pin you, okay? Which we saw. Like that's not Burroughs' forte. And he certainly didn't do that against Marsteller. But he controlled the matches. He controlled the pace. It was Burroughs' kind of match. It was in and out. I'll be interested to see at the world level if they're going to call Burroughs for this, where he puts his hand on the guy's head.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
It's real close, right? It's certainly not dirty or anything, but like where you're not supposed to go to the eyes, but like he's going to the eyebrows. So the interview with Burroughs was great afterwards, and I think we all check out our wrestling eventually in our competition lives, and we all have to make peace with certain things. And I think it was how he was treated in Penn State. This is just my opinion. It's not USA Wrestling. I thought it was disgusting. And, Burroughs is an ambassador for our sport. You can like him. You can hate him. You can love him. But he's done a lot of good for the sport. And he's been very, very successful for the United States. And he was successful when the United States was not good.
Correct.
And so you got to put respect on that man's name, and that idiot in the crowd that, it's so great now they're replaying that video because it's in context of what just happened. And I don't know how much longer Burroughs is going to go. I mean, I would say this. I don't think Burroughs is going to go till 28, but he might. And what's interesting is I don't know who's going 86. I mean, Zahid, but Taylor's not going back down. Brooks isn't going back. I think Heidley and Zahid are the 2 guys right now I would pick if Burroughs isn't there.
Yep.
So what were your thoughts on 86?
I thought JB did exactly what he needed to do to win the match. I think his quickness and his fakes kept Marsteller off balance both matches, because every time Jordan did that little fake, Marsteller has to react, because if you don't react, he's in on your legs and you're in big trouble. So he had to react. So he never got comfortable. He wasn't doing that the last 2 times they wrestled. So that was a huge thing that he had actually worked on to help him get better. I thought his quickness was much better, David, and he was able to hit that double, and he's always been so good at the double. But there were times he got in on that, and it wasn't quite where he wanted to be. He came right back out so quick that he never got underneath Marsteller. So it was a really good game plan. So that, I couldn't be happier for him. That's the best I've seen him wrestle in probably 3 years, David.
I think the 11 pounds makes a big difference, right? I think 74 is hard for him, and we all know this. It's harder to make weight, lose weight, maintain weight as you get older. Burroughs has made weight a gazillion times, right? Marsteller's awfully hard to get to, just his body style and his stance.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I would never want to tell somebody when they should retire, right? Like, if somebody said to me, like, listen, dude, just go do your regular job, get out of wrestling, don't do podcasts, don't do play-by-plays, don't do event. Like, listen, don't tell me how to live my life. Okay, like, if I'm not hurting anybody, let me live my life the way I want to live my life. If Burroughs is going to retire, it would be awfully awesome to see him go out on top at the Worlds.
Yep.
I think that's just a sentiment of love and respect. You know, I'm not even suggesting that Jordan should be done. Okay. I'm just saying, if he chose to be done, let's hope it's a storybook ending. So,
well, the way he wrestled this last weekend, I don't see any reason why he thinks he can't win another world. Maybe two, because he just looks really good at that weight right now.
Yeah. I mean, and the weight, you know, like Nolf, you know, has retired from wrestling. He's doing BJJ and grappling. You know, it's going to be interesting who the next crop is at 74, right? I mean, I thought Nolf was on that short list, and he's not now. I mean, not that he can't come back, but like, I don't think Keegan's going back down anytime soon. I think David Carr is the guy right now. You know, I mean,
yeah.
And he took third in the non-Olympic trials.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see. Okay, 92. Zahid was sitting. The story of the tournament's David Taylor, right? The story was he entered late. There were rumors down at the golf tournament he was going to wrestle. I think he was another guy that just didn't like how the story went at Olympic trials. And that was weird because it's him and Brooks, and they're both Penn State guys, and the meet was at Penn State. But you could see some division. Like, if you were, like, I don't want to be like a flex, but like if you were there, you could kind of see how certain people were treated certain ways and certain coaches were in certain corners. And then the conversations afterwards about David by some of the people that are from that side of the equation, you know, and it's very interesting, right? Like, if Brooks doesn't beat Zahid, David probably makes the team. David makes the team, he probably medals, if not wins it. Okay? Then I don't think David's coaching at
Agreed.
Oklahoma State.
100%.
And so, you know, it's like that, I can't think of the movie, but something doors, sliding doors. Like, you know, one thing in life is a catalyst for 9 other things, right? So Oklahoma State goes and spends $1 million a year on David, right? That changes Coleman Scott's life, okay? It changes all these recruits. Like, there's a kid that was committed to OU, but he was an M2 guy. He just flipped, right? There's other guys that have flipped. It's just, everything has a chain effect, or a lot of things have a chain effect, but it's interesting when you can see it so clearly.
Well, it's kind of funny how you said that, because if Zahid does beat Brooks, which he was right there to beat him, obviously.
Well, the singlet pool call was a big deal.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, David wins. He doesn't coach. But David doesn't win. He does coach. And because he's coaching and working out in the room with the kids is the reason he wanted to go back and try it again. You see what I'm saying?
No, that's fair.
So his coaching,
that's another good point.
Going there actually is the reason that he showed up at the World's trials, and he looked good. I mean, he didn't look like he'd been doing this, you know, the best of the best for forever, but he got better every time he went out on the mat, and that's kind of what you're looking for. So he looked more comfortable, especially at the end.
Yeah, again, when I say this is not like some flex like I'm important, but I've known Robert Plott for a long time, since Dustin. Robert is Dustin's dad, okay? Just since Dustin was like a sophomore in high school, because maybe a freshman, because Tuttle came to the Beat the Street Chicago duels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I called the junior duels match where Dustin's match won the team title for Oklahoma. Okay. So we've just do Hardell, 100 other people. And I saw Robert at the golf tournament. And I said, how does Dustin like the new staff? And he goes, we love Coach Smith. He goes, but we also love the new staff. And he goes, Dustin's getting to wrestle with David a lot, and it's making a difference. And so what's fascinating about that is, to me, is David's a better wrestler than Dustin Plott, right? Like, at least at their peaks. Okay, and it's like whatever, like, however good you were at 22, you're not the same at 42, okay? But David's not 42. David's 34 or whatever and 33 and still in really good shape, clearly, So it's fascinating to see how David working out with Plott, who else knows? Cody Merrill, Luke Serber, maybe Caldwell, right? But like, you would look at all the guys that David's wrestling with and go, well, he's better than all of them, right?
Sure.
But he looked so much better than the Olympic trials. I mean, he looked so much better. Like he had the one hard match with Hidley, but I think that was more of a last, when's the last time David Taylor wrestled 4 matches in a day? It's like the Worlds or the Olympics. Yeah. Like that's the only time he does it.
Yep.
He's always in Final X, so it's always 2 matches. I mean, Olympic trials, he was in Final X. Brooks was the one that had to wrestle the first day and cut weight till 1 a.m.
Yep.
And then those matches were spaced because they had the morning one and the evening one. So, I mean, he wrestled a gauntlet, not in terms of every match being hard for him, but just mat time. So, I mean, I also heard him say, well, I got to talk to the administration of my team about whether I'm going to wrestle in the Worlds. Okay. So I'm torn on this, right? Like, you pay a guy $1 million a year, you kind of expect him to be a full-time coach. Like, I think that's the old school argument, and it's not a bad argument, right? The other argument is if you're trying to get better, your focus isn't on getting the other person better. Okay, that's another argument. The third argument is if you're going to go to the Worlds, you're not just like if the meet's on Friday, you're not going to fly out to Albania on Thursday. Like you're going to go acclimate and then be there. You're going to be gone a week.
Yep.
The other side of it is it's a very different example now, right? Like most teams have really good coaches that were really good at wrestling that may or may not still be wrestling with the kids. Okay. It's something different when you see your coach out there beating people up. Okay. Like it feels different. And I mean, I don't think Oklahoma State would want David doing this for the next 4 years. Okay. So I mean, I don't know when you pull the plug, but I could see Burroughs and Taylor going to the Worlds, winning it, and leaving their shoes on the mat. I could definitely see Taylor doing it, right? Like you go out on those terms versus the trials terms, right? You had a world title, the resume. I mean, best case scenario, you beat Sajalayev, right? But either way, like you shot your shot, new environment, you come back invigorated. Energy is real, right? Oklahoma State's the hottest story in college wrestling right now because nobody knows if David's going to be a good college coach.
Yep.
I mean, they got a bunch of portal guys. So, I mean, they've low-key kind of done what Iowa's done. They just did it in different ways, and the timing of it feels a little less suspect. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But they have as many portal guys as Iowa does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go through their
I think David's going to be a phenomenal head coach. And I think, and I don't know what the administration's thinking, but I guarantee there's not a kid on that wrestling team that doesn't want him to go win Worlds just because he's part of that. I think,
of course, that. Yeah. I think if you're selfish and again, I don't think Dustin Plott feels this way, but it's like, hey, I'm going to miss the week that I don't get to work out with Coach Taylor. Okay. I mean, and somebody from the staff is going with David, whether it's Jimmy or Caldwell or Gilman or whoever, right?
Yep.
So, the other interesting thing was, like, I saw Gilman shake Blaze's hand and say something to him, and look positive. I'm sure he didn't say anything negative. But it's super interesting, right? Because they got to be one of the teams trying to recruit him. And it's interesting, right? Because if you're Blaze, you're like, I just beat your best guy, right? Like, how much better are you going to make me? I mean, like, some of these conversations are super fascinating the way this stuff all goes, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, well, I think we got like 5 minutes left, and we were going to
tell me about your big event this weekend, because was going to be there, where you're doing it at, what's going on.
Well, we said St. Charles, Missouri. It's borderbrawl.org. It spoke to Gary Abbott. The press release will go out today. It's going to be streamed on Flow Saturday night, 6 p.m. Central. The fall one's interesting. You don't get any big kids because they all play football.
Okay.
But the alumni list is really good. Like, from the last Olympics, we had 8 people in the trials. 2 people make the team, Kamal and Brooks. So obviously had our first Olympic medalist in Brooks. Dayton's been in the past, Cade Brock, Jaden Ironman, a bunch of superstars. Caldwell wrestled in it. Joe Smith wrestled in it. Holschlag, Max Thompson, a bunch of NCAA guys, like Jared J.Q. Sprague-Muller. So it's for veterans with amputations and PTSD. It's tied to Randy Couture's foundation, the Extreme Couture GI Foundation, xcgif.org. Randy flies in tomorrow. He'll be here all weekend. And our event's different. Like, Randy does motorcycle runs, and we did one of those, and we had like a hurricane, basically, or tornado. It's like hardly anybody came. The weather was terrible, but it's interesting because you don't really spend any time like with Randy while you're riding. Like, you go to a spot, you draw this poker run card, and then
sure.
Ours is a wrestling meet that's designed to be really good and just the money we raise just it goes to a good cause, doesn't go in anybody's pocket. So it's a little different that way. Like, it's just as important to me that the wrestling be really good, that the alumni list be really good, than just the money, but the money's important too. Like, Joe Jeter has been on the event twice. He just made a world team, age group team. Ladarian Lockett, D. Lockett. The age group guys and girls have been really good. So it's always interesting to see who comes out of here that'll be different. Now, we got some kids from Chicago this year, so we're excited about that. That's the first time. Maddie Neuenhuis, who's been in Who's Number One, is coming down from Michigan. So shout out to her dad and Mario Flores up there at Rev for helping us coordinate that. Zoe Haney and Maya Hairston will be wrestling those girls at that weight class. So there'll be some really good matches. And a lot of kids double up. Like, we got kids coming in from Stillwater, Edmond North, Marion Catholic, Derby High School in Kansas. So it's, but if people want to be in the meet, I'm not hard to find on social, and they can reach out. The next one's going to be in March, and we're partnering up with the national preps on that event. So it's going to be a different format. It will be at Germantown Academy. I can announce that. It'll be the Tuesday night before nationals. And, it's twice as much work because we're doing it twice a year now. But, I got to have dinner with Joe Smith a couple of weeks ago, and I remember the very first one. We had Joe Smith and we had Sandy Stevens. And I was like, okay, and we're doing it at Union Station in St. Louis. So we had a super cool venue. We had John Smith's son in the meet. We had Randy Couture there, and we had the voice of wrestling and Sandy Stevens. It's like, okay, coming out of the box, right? Like, you want it to be legitimate. It's like when we first started doing this podcast on track wrestling, you want it to feel legitimate. So, that's we're just really proud. We started this in 2015. So this is the 10th year,
Good.
15, 16, 17, and then 25 will be the 10-year anniversary.
Good.
So,
well, I hope people, at least if they can't make it, they're able to tune in on Flow and watch the matches. So that's
they can donate xcgif.org. There's a donate now button there. You can go straight. It goes straight to the bottom line. And Randy's foundation is run by his gym staff, so they have no overhead. I mean, we have some overhead, like we have to rent the building and everything else, but generally the VIP and ticket sales cover all those costs. And in this case, we hit that mark. So, if somebody wants to go online and donate $20, that $20 is going to go straight to the foundation.
Good.
Minus any credit card costs or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I just sent Gary the press release again, so I'm sure it'll go up later today or tomorrow. And the Flow guys have been good. Travis Peter and those guys are awesome to work with. So, all right. And I think next week we'll end up talking about, we're knocking on the door of college season, right? So
it's time to start going through the rankings and seeing where everybody put everyone. It'd be kind of fun to go see what we think and make our predictions.
We get a lot wrong. Okay. But what is funny, and I have to go back and look, and you may have made the same pick. Okay. I get a lot wrong. You get a lot right. That's fine. But I did pick Figueroa to win 25 last year. But that pick looked like garbage for a long time. So I will say this, and we can get out of here. I think Younger Bastida and Luke Lilladau, probably the two people I would pick to place at Nationals that didn't place last year. One didn't have the opportunity to, and one was hurt and just didn't wrestle well. But, I think there'll be some people that didn't, and as deep as these brackets are and the number of people coming back, 25 looks again like there's several people that could win that bracket. So,
yep.
And shout out to Nike and Grant Turner. They sponsor Border Brawl. They provide us with the uniforms and everything else, and kids love those. And I'm sure that has something to do with who wrestles in the event. So, all right, for GT, who's not here, Mark and myself, thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.